welcome. It's Doug Cunnington here. This is the Doug Show Live. Today, we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk about some random stuff that I've been up to. It's very cold here in the Boulder area, or at least it has been for the last week or so. I always talk about the weather, but it's supposed to be warm. It's supposed to be warm, at least for today. And then I'm going to mention a speaking thing that I'm doing soon. Talk about that some. For the long time viewers and listeners, you may remember that I have teased that for a little while. Justin, what's going on? Good to see you. Give me a shout in the chat if you are, actually just give me a shout in the chat. Say hello, let me know where you're from and all that. And I'm also going to talk about productivity and sleep. I'm going to show some highlights coming out. And then, like I said, just some other random stuff, like some general marketing kind of stuff. Quick little story. I keep my email list pretty clean for an itch site project. And basically that means if people don't open the emails, I will delete them from the list. I know a lot of people will try to re-engage folks that are not opening emails or paying attention or whatever. And I've tried that, but I found it to be like a super low response rate. So basically, I was like, I think if people are not opening the emails, it's probably going either to spam or a place where they're not looking for it anymore, or they're not or they are not interested. So that said, I usually just delete them. So I keep a pretty clean email list and usually have open rates in the mid 20s to high 20s. So that's pretty good. And I mean, for earlier in my digital marketing career, I didn't keep the email list very clean. And basically what happened was I had like open rates that were like under 10%. So super low. Anyway, I keep it clean now, keep it tight, and then you end up with much higher open rates. Anyway, I sent out an email on Monday that ended up getting like roughly 40% less than a normal open. And I think it ended up in a different tab or somewhere different where people don't open it. In fact, the reason why I thought of it is because someone emailed me about it. So they're like, hey, I like your emails. I always open them, but this one ended up in a different tab for Gmail. I do not know why. It could have been some of the content in the subject line. It could have been the content in the email. I have no clue. But for whatever reason, it didn't go to a place where people opened it much. So hopefully Google is not shifting my emails around because I had what seemed to be a pretty darn good open rate. Okay, moving on. We see McChew, what's up? Ahmad, good to have you on. So usually we'll cover a couple topics that I want to go over today, and then we'll get into a few Q&A from the crowd if there's some good ones. I know sometimes we hit some fairly basic questions that there's a better resource than just me like verbatim restating something. So if you go to nichesiteproject.com/FAQ, if you've never visited that page, there's many frequently asked questions. You should definitely check it out. Even if you don't have any questions right this second, if you go look there, you will probably think of other questions, and it's always nice to see what other people are thinking about that have a different perspective than you. So check out the frequently asked questions. All right. I think looks like we only have a few people, but it's only I started right at the top of the hour, but I'm just going to press on. I expect everyone can hear me, right? Justin, McChew, Ahmad, can you guys hear me okay? It looks like it. I selected the proper microphone, so. All right. So I've been super busy doing a lot of interviews lately. And basically, it's really fun to do the interviews. You just get to chat with some people, learn about them, and ask questions that maybe you don't get to ask all the time. So to that note, the interview that I was trying to spread the word on earlier this week is the interview with Carl Jensen, and basically he retired when he was 43. He's 46 now, and he retired in basically under 1,500 days. Super nice guy, lives in the local area, so I've hung out with him a couple times, had a beer, and basically we were able to sit down and talk for like an hour. Very interesting conversation. It was a lot of fun. I had, 10 other questions, 10 other angles that I could have talked to Carl about, but in the interest of time, I just kept it to about an hour, but hopefully we can get him on to, answer some more questions in the future. So anyway, I'm going to play a clip from Carl here, and I encourage people to check it out. And actually, I may pause for a second because I think the notification email went out. We jumped to a lot more viewers here. So, like I said, I interviewed Carl. Very interesting conversation. And for the people that are not familiar with the financial independence, I guess sort of a movement, or at least there's interest in that topic area. It's sort of a subset of personal finance, where people are like, "Hey, we want to save money and watch our expenses and just do normal budgeting." I think it's very easy to not do that, especially if you have, a job where you're making enough money to cover your expenses and you have some extra, and you may find yourself like buying extra stuff. That is basically what I did. Like after I got a job out of college, I bought things because my friends were buying things. I bought a house. I upgraded my car. I did all the normal stuff as I was like kind of paying down debt, but not really. And the financial independence or FI movement is generally around, watching your expenses. You don't have to be like super frugal or anything. I'm not excessively frugal. There are certain areas where I don't care much, like my car. So I don't spend a lot on the car. And basically, and I'll get to some questions here in a second, but basically, I don't spend a lot on my car, but I really enjoy beer and food, and I guess like spirits, right? So not just beer, but alcohol in general. And like I will spend a lot of money on certain areas while I don't care about certain things. So I'm not going to even like go down the route of getting a super expensive car because at this point I'm not super interested. Okay. And I see a few people said hello, and I'm just going to hop in. All right. So, Chad, you're asking about keywords. Go to nichesiteproject.com/FAQ. Basically, you're asking how many keywords to put into an article. It depends on how you're writing the content. You can just target one keyword or you could target many, but it depends on what you're trying to do. And someone asks if the KGR still works. Yes, it does. There's like 5 new success stories on the channel from like the last 6 weeks. So go check those out. Ahmad, I'll come back to your question. And Tosh, what's up? Okay, so Mick Chu, I'm talking about Carl Jensen, and Mick Chu says he never explains how he saved the money to get to $1 million. Did he just save a lot? How did he do it? He never explained how to save that much. Was he super frugal? No. Kind of like I just mentioned, he basically, like, there were certain things that he was interested in spending money on that are important, healthy food, and that sort of thing. But there are some things like we talk about our cars specifically. I don't have like a super nice new car. He doesn't either, but we have cars um, that serve the utility that we need them to do, and we enjoy them. We have enjoyed them, and we bought them maybe when we were actually like spending more money. But at this, like he bought the car that he drives brand new, and he probably wouldn't do that again. He mentions that in the interview. But basically, you pick and choose what you want to spend money on. And one of the big things, so I think Carl and I are similar, and as you talk to more people, you find that a lot of people, when they're around our age, so Carl is like 40, he's 46 now, I'm 40, but basically as soon as we got jobs, we started putting money into our 401ks and investing. Nothing crazy, but when you're 22 and you start putting in your 401k, like 20 years is a long time. We went through 2 sort of like downturns and recessions, like fairly significant ones, and like you just end up saving money. So Michu, I don't know how old you are, but basically if you're in your 20s, there's like no reason like you can't be a millionaire by the time you're like 40. Like I make it sound super easy, and maybe I'm disconnected. It depends on where you live and how much money and blah, blah, blah. But there are so many examples as I'm exploring this world of personal finance and stuff. And basically, like, if you start in your 20s, like, you would have to seriously like screw up to not accumulate a lot of money. So I could be disconnected because that's just what I did. Um, and that happened to be what Carl did as well. So when he was 37, he was like, how do I retire early? He found that, you can understand your expenses, save a little bit more, and then maybe like reorient what you're trying to do so that you're not spending money on things that aren't actually making you happy. And then as you're saving more, it accumulates. And really, I think the math, like if you save, and this is a huge amount, but if you can save, I think it's like 60 some odd percent of your income, you should be able to retire in about 10 years. All right. So if you just do the math and you understand the 4% rule, I refer to the full interview so you can get a little more detail. And David said it's more difficult when you have kids, 100%. Carl has 2 kids, and they were already around when he went down the path to try and retire. So yes, David, 100%. And as I am looking at my finances and compare it to potentially like my siblings and stuff like that, where my siblings have kids, I'm like, holy cow, that's amazingly expensive to have children, but people like them. So, but yes, definitely more difficult. And if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to try to pay for my children's college, which, I mean, I don't have kids, so I don't have any skin in the game, but I mean, me paying for my own college, at like 100% myself versus people that I know that had their college paid for, I tried way harder. Like if you're throwing down the cash, and I worked through college too, so it took me longer to go through. It took like 6.5 years, where some of my friends made it out in like 3.5 or 4. They're also smarter than me. But yes, David, 100%. Way more difficult if you have kids. However, there are examples, in there are like endless examples of people with like lots of kids. Any situation you could think of, any situation. Um, but yeah, it is totally doable, and it's all about like where you're putting your effort and time, and if it's like a high priority. And even if you can't do it in 10 years, I mean, if you could do it before 59 and a half, that's pretty good. And for me, I know it's probably like 6 7 years ago, I realized, oh wow, I can't get to any of that 401k or retirement fund money without penalty. I know you could always get to the money until you're 59 and a half. So basically, if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to retire early, you probably should invest in with what we call like taxable accounts. So it's like after taxes, I invest it, and then it's not locked down under penalty like your retirement funds, like a 401k, Roth IRA, or otherwise. So anyway, McChew, does that help, or is that kind of a bullshit answer from me where I'm like, you just save it? But really, like over time, like if you're putting away money, like over time, the compound interest is just fantastic. And we talked just a tiny bit about like index funds, but basically most of the people are just investing in like a total market index fund primarily. People mix it up depending on whether they're closer to retirement or what they're trying to do. Maybe they like more international stuff, but basically it's index funds, whether it's like an S&P 500 style or like a broader range. Consult your financial expert or accountants or whoever. But yeah, and Mick Chu, like I said, if you're, I don't know how old you are, but if you're in your 20s, like just start saving, like save as much as you can. And I remember when I was in my 20s, I can't remember, anybody know when Roth IRAs first came out? I feel like they were pretty new, like right when I was able to start actually saving some money. But I remember the financial advisor that I went to, which I don't, I'm probably not going to be, I mean, I ended my relationship with that financial advisor, I guess. the point is, he was like, you should max out your Roth while you can. At some point, you're going to make too much money. And at that point in time, I was like, I can't imagine. Like, I'm only making like 55 or something like that. And basically, I was like, sure, whatever. But sure enough, it was like 4 or 5 years, and I ended up like making too much money, and then you can't contribute to a Roth IRA anymore. All right. See some questions over here, and then I'm going to play the clip. So thanks. I'm glad some people are hopping on here, and I either these shows are at a really bad time, I'm really boring, or something weird is going on, because I was checking out Alex Cooper over at WP Eagle, and he crushes it for his live streams. His are a little bit later in the day. Maybe I should time mine around his, but he had like 75 people, and we have 20 fine people here, but I guess I'm more boring or something like that. Could be. All right. So Mick Chu, good questions, and hopefully, I encourage you to check out Carl's blog. He tracks his net worth from the beginning of his journey. So like I said, within 4 years, he was like in good shape. All right, I'm going to come back to some questions. I'm going to see if there's any that are relevant here, and then I'm going to play a clip from Carl since we're talking about him for a bit. Derek, what's up? We got Merrick. Justin, I see you got a question there, so I'll take a look at that as I'm playing the clip. And Banga keeps asking about these power tools, and you're asking, should you go for it if you're a beginner or a sub niche like garden tools? It really doesn't matter. You could do either one. I would recommend you start smaller. And just a quick tip, people that are asking questions, I'll come to them at the end. If they're totally irrelevant, it won't help you to keep posting them. All right. You don't have to keep posting them. There's not that many people in here. So I'll get to your questions. But yeah, no need to spam and just keep putting the same thing in there. All right. Okay. Let's get to that clip with Carl here. And let me find the one where we are talking about retirement and income levels here. So let's hear from Carl Jensen.
Yeah, sure. And I don't mind sharing my age. We'll work backwards. I am 46 now. I just turned 46. I stopped formally working at the age of 43. And I got this whole idea when I was 37. I remember it was October of 2012, and I was in software like we talked about. And for the most part, it was a good job, but this particular job was writing code for a medical device. So, and previously I had worked in industries like insurance or point of sale systems where if you mess up the code, you might quote someone the wrong price for an insurance policy, or you might charge someone the wrong taxes for a purchase. But in this case, if I screwed up the code, I could potentially cause serious harm or kill someone. So that was bad for two reasons. The number one reason was just the stress. You always had this kind of dark cloud over your head thinking, it's not like a job where you're a pilot where as soon as you go home, the stress is done, you've done your job. But this, I could have potentially introduced a bug in the code 5 years ago that could harm someone that's been hidden all this time and took a weird situation to come up. But the other reason was I didn't do a whole lot of coding. It was mostly writing documentation for the FDA, dealing with audits. So I'm sure you were a software guy. Like I love the code writing part of the job. That part was really fun and cool, trying to solve the puzzles. But everything that went along with it was not good. And I had this job for a while, but at one point in October 2012, we thought there was a bug in the code, and I thought I caused it. And it was a bug that could have potentially harmed someone. It turned out that there was an error in the testing, and it wasn't, so I didn't do anything wrong. But for that week, my stress was so overwhelming. I think I lost like 10 pounds in a week. And I remember being huddled over the toilet thinking I was going to throw up from the stress because I'd let my coworkers down. I could have potentially hurt someone. And while none of that was true, the stress was overwhelming. And the thought I had at the time was, if I do this for the next 25 years, I'm going to be dead. I'm going to die of stress. I'm going to have like hypertension or a heart attack or something like that. So I Googled, how do I retire early? And up came these blogs like JD Roth from Get Rich Slowly and Mr. Money Mustache, whose co-working space we're sitting in right now. Life has come full circle. And I started reading these blogs, and it was about these two guys who claimed they had retired in their 30s. And the first thought I had was, what kind of shit have I landed on? This must be some kind of scam where they're going to try to sell me some multi-level marketing thing, like when is the sales pitch coming? But I started reading through the blog, especially Mr. Money Mustache, who went into a lot of numbers like the 4% rule and the math behind early retirement. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to live off $24,000 a year like Pete does. That's too little. But this is pretty much just a simple math problem. So at that time, I did not have enough money to retire. But thankfully, I'd always been a saver. And there's a story behind that, too. We'd always been pretty frugal. That was probably the craziest time of our life where we weren't being frugal. So we pretty much pivoted. We sold our house. We moved to a much cheaper home. And I set out a plan to retire. I figured it would take me about 4 years or 1,500 days, and I'd always enjoyed writing, so I thought, why don't I document this journey on the internet? It'll keep me honest, and it'll be fun. Yeah, that happened, and I made my number about a year earlier than I planned, not due to any genius on my own part, but due to a great stock market. But that's it. Now I quit, and let's see, I don't even remember when I quit. Yeah, it was 2013. But I made my goal in 2012. So the money's easy. The emotions, not easy, but simple. The emotions that go around it are a little bit more difficult.
Congratulations. Yeah. That's an awesome story.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
For the people that are wondering out there, you do have a blog, and we will get into numbers, what you're making from the blog and a lot of the details, since that's what a lot of my audience is used to.
Sure.
But I am super fascinated with like the emotional part. It's a simple math problem, right? Like when you get down to it, it's a simple math problem. So can you just hit at a high level the 4% rule, and then I'll provide some links. You have some excellent blog posts where you outline it a little bit more detailed, but yeah, what's the bottom line?
Yeah, so there's a lot of moving parts to the 4% rule, but at a real high level, what it says is once you've accumulated enough money to live on 4% of it your first year, and then after that, it adjusts for inflation. But so, for example, my number was I need $40,000 a year to live on. Therefore, I would need $1 million to retire. After that, it gets ratcheted up for inflation, but that is the very basics of the 4% rule. So I accumulated my $1 million in April 2012, I think.
Okay. And for people that want to go deeper, you documented this whole process on your blog. You list your net worth. You have, the benchmarks that you hit. And I'm curious because it's funny to talk about money in certain circles.
It sure is, right? It's the most taboo subject in the world.
Right. And even, around here, a lot of us have maybe like sort of a freer schedule. We're like-minded folks. But even then, it's like slightly awkward because we're talking about money and it's just taboo. So did you get pushback from like family or friends or anything like that?
Yeah, I was anonymous, and eventually a story went viral and everyone found out what it was. And then it got kind of weird. But the thing I found is money is so taboo. So I'll back up a second. When the story went public, our picture showed up on the front page of Yahoo. And my initial reaction was like, oh, shit. And I was still working at the time. But then I'm like, no one reads Yahoo News. Like, who reads that anymore? But then it turns out everyone reads Yahoo News. We started getting all these text messages like 10 minutes later saying, hey, you're on Yahoo and you've got $1 million? Like, holy shit, why don't you tell us about any of this? And I'm like freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, my job's going to find out. But then I thought, maybe this will be good. The whole reason I've been so open with money is my goal was to kind of bring it out into the open, because if we all talked about it, I think we'd be a lot healthier. We could start helping each other out and not trying to hide behind expensive cars to disguise our insecurities and everything that goes along with not having money. So I thought it would be a good exercise to be public with it. And it turned out we haven't helped. I've helped people, but no close people, no friends or family, really. I found they don't care, or they just feel weird about asking about it. Mm-hmm. But I get random emails from strangers on the internet and mail, which is kind of weird, asking me for money. And I won't give you money, but I will give you help, and no one wants to take me up on that. They just want the easy answer. So I'd rather teach them to fish than give them the fish. What was your original question? I think I went way off on a tangent.
No, that's perfect. It was about just talking about money and being public.
Yeah. I've got one other crazy story about that. When I was about 12 or 13, money is always fascinated to me, and kind of because I didn't grow up with it, so there was a lot of insecurity and some scary moments as a kid where my dad would be laid off. So when I was 12 or 13, I went to my mom. I'm like, "Hey, Mom, how much money does Dad make?" And the whole reason I wanted to know this was I was just curious. I wanted to know how much I needed to make as an adult, and I was curious about what they did with their money. And then my mom gets this look on her face. She's like, "That is private. You cannot ask those questions. You better not ask that again." And she got all mad about it. I'm like, "Oh, okay." So then plan B was to sneak down to the file cabinet in the basement and look at their paycheck stubs, which I did, and I eventually found out that way. But then the funny thing was, a couple months after that, my mom's like, "Hey, come downstairs. We need to have a conversation." I'm like, "Oh, okay, Mom, what's going on?" I'm kind of scared. She's like, "Let's talk about the birds and the bees." And I'm like, "Hey, Mom, I found out about all this stuff through the kid on the playground. I know what to do. I know how to be safe. So I'm just going to go back outside and play. I promise I'll be good with that stuff." So my mom was okay talking to me about sex, but not about money. And I'm the exact opposite with my kids. And part of it might be because I have two girls. I'm like, "Oh," our younger one is like, "Well, how do babies get made?" "Well, Mom and Dad love each other, and then a baby is there. But how does it get there? Is that going to happen to me?" I'm like, I went off on a big tangent there, but it's funny.
All right, that was Carl giving us a little sex education there. I didn't ask about that specifically, but Carl found a way to work that in, which is cool. Keeps it light. Keeps it light. We got some good questions that popped in. And by the way, people, if you didn't catch that full interview, it's a very good one, but I will also be publishing the smaller segments. And I noticed today, or actually this week, that Tim Ferriss is on his YouTube channel. He's publishing like log interviews, like he has been, but he's also doing the shorter segments, chopping it up. And hopefully I can do it in a way that doesn't annoy people. We publish a ton of stuff on the channel because there's podcast interviews or podcast episodes that I republish on here. There are interviews, there are tutorials, and if I publish the clips too, it's more than one video per day. Just in general, there's so much content, and I do know that the highlight reels bring people to have an opinion. So either they hate the clips or they love the clips. So I think I have to lean into and identify with the people that love it, because those people are basically like enjoying it. They're watching it. I can see the views, and I can see there are at least a few hundred people that are totally watching the videos. So I know the shorter ones are good, and it's hard to commit for an hour and 10-minute interview, but it's much easier to watch an 8-minute clip. So I'm going to be experimenting with that, and I tested it last fall, and it's kind of hard to test things at scale when there are so many variables. So I kind of have to look at the aggregate data and figure out like, okay, did that seem like it was better? Was it actually better? Do the numbers reflect it? And then what happens when I stop? Can I clearly see views and watch time go up or down? And it looks like the data says that people, at least the true fans that give a shit, they watch. And for the people that don't want to watch all the clips, that is okay. You just not watch them. All right. So we got some cool questions coming in, but I'm gonna actually share my screen here. I'm gonna see if I can do this without screwing everything up here, because I have a bit of an announcement. I'll talk about it a lot more, but just wanted to share something with you. All right, I think you can see this window. Okay, perfect. So Pub Intelligence, I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's going to be April 3rd in New York City at Google, and it's put on by my friends at Ezoic, and Ezoic is a partial sponsor for the Doug Show Live here. So I want to thank them. There is a link in the description so that you can go check out some things. They are they help you basically make more money on your website with generally the same amount of traffic through intelligent testing and generally just doing a better job showing the visitors what they want to see and showing ads in a systematic kind of way. I'm speaking there, so that is why I'm telling you about this. This is a free event, by the way, so you do have to be accepted, but it used to be an invite only event, and at this point you can apply, and it's a single day. It's Friday, April 3rd, and basically you can get more details here. There's a link in the description. Like I said, it's free, so do you have to pay to attend? The answer is no. It's put on by Google and Ezoic, and they're not sponsored, or sorry, they're organizers. They're not sponsors. And basically, you get food, you get the happy hour, you get to see the speakers, and there's some other details here. I'm not going to just read the website, but it was pretty cool. So I'm listed here with some big players. You got Tyler Bishop, the CMO over at Ezoic, super smart guy. Barry Schwartz, Search Engine Roundtable. We have the CDO from Hearst Publishing, and then me. Somehow I weaseled my way into this situation, and I don't have my speech locked down or even the topic, but they gave me a couple suggestions, and they kind of just let me like talk about whatever I want. So this is going to be big. I'm kind of freaking out. It's about 50 days away, and there's going to be a reasonable sized crowd. And then Tyler, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Benedictum, and it looks like he's the founder over at Bike Rumor, which sounds like an interesting contact to make, because this site apparently is badass, and it was launched in July of 2018. So anyway, this is pretty cool. This is my first official speaking situation, and I've been talking about it and sort of teasing that I wanted to try and do it, and I never did. I mean, I have been studying like talks, but I never like put myself out or mentioned that I do any speaking or anything. But since I've been doing some work with Ezoic, they were kind enough to invite me, and I was like, I got to do it. It's at a Google office, and it's a good company, and it's my kind of crew, digital publishers. So they will be interested in what I'm talking about. Thanks, Josh. You mentioned it's pretty cool, and it's a good opportunity. Thanks a lot. So I'm going to hit some questions now before we talk about some of the other things, other topics that I wanted to cover today. So I know that Dwight was asking about KGR packages. So keyword golden ratio. Dwight says that you have ordered some packages, and a couple are starting to hit, but you haven't done any link building, and many are doing well with YouTube videos. So Dwight, if the KGR packages that you have purchased, if they seem to be working out for you and you have the budget for it, then go for it. If you don't have the budget, or it's a little bit of a stretch, or maybe you want to try some on your own, then I encourage you to maybe mix in some of your own keyword research. I think it's a great skill to have. One of the cool things when you get into internet marketing, niche sites, or affiliate marketing, or any subset that's within the digital marketing area, like you're learning skills, like you're learning how to do keyword research. So you could totally outsource it, but there's definitely value in understanding how to do the mechanics, even if you don't always do that. At the end of the day, if you're stacking these skills, and a lot of people talk about stacking skills, because I'm an okay project manager, I'm an okay coder, I'm an okay, I guess, email copywriter, and I'm okay at keyword research. I'm not super exceptional in any one area, but the combination of those things is kind of unique. So I can get by being adequate at best in most areas. And then everything else makes up for it. So you kind of can plug some holes where you have like gaps in your skill set. And if you could learn how to do keyword research, or if you already know how to do it, then that's cool. If you have the budget and you just don't like doing it, that's fine too. But if they're working out fine and you have the budget for it, then I think that's fine to pay a company to do that legwork for you. All right, and let me see here if I missed any others. Scrolling down, David mentions that you need to learn how to fish. Indeed, yeah, David. I think if you check out some of the financial independence podcasts out there, you'll find many different examples. People that are young, people that are old that got into it. Not that you're old, but whether you're 50 or 20, like there's some case study or example where someone had it, had the same sort of situation, basically. It's very interesting. And I think some of the people that potentially are like retiring like super early when they're like 20, I think, well, hopefully they're going to do more work. It turns out anyone who's like figured out how to retire like extremely early, usually they're pretty ambitious, and usually they keep doing a lot of cool, interesting stuff. Okay, Tosh asked this. A KGR term that I got to rank about number 1 a month ago seems to be gradually producing more traffic as time goes by. Is this gradual rise normal? Generally, so that when you explain that, I'm like, yeah, that seems normal. You're probably ranking for more long tail keywords. So as you're getting more traffic to that page, Google is able to get more metrics on the traffic as far as user interaction, and they understand people dig this content. So we were going to rank it higher for other keywords, other long tails that you may not even be tracking. So it's slowly pulling in more traffic. This, by the way, is a wonderful time to go in and improve that content. Go to your search console, download the keywords that you're ranking for, that you're getting impressions for, that you're getting clicks for that specific URL. Go and optimize it. There's some couple filters that would be helpful to do that, but basically you have all the data right there. Go and improve that content. You'll get even more traffic. Damien says, I'm on 130 articles, 90% of them are KGR, 15 to 20% increase in traffic month by month. Thanks for providing so much valuable content. That is fantastic. Damien, can you please send me an email? Doug@nichesiteproject.com. I would love to see a little data and or screenshots. As I mentioned, I'm doing that speaking gig and having real, very recent like case study examples where it's like, Damien from my YouTube live streams is crushing it. He published a shitload of content and he's seeing a huge gain in traffic. That would be fantastic. And by the way, there's a little call to action for everyone. If you have a cool success story, those by far are the most popular episodes that I have, whether it's a video or if it's a podcast. People love them. So I can see that in the metrics very easily. The other part is people send me an email and they're like, it's so inspiring to hear when people are making a little bit of money. Maybe they're not like Ron Stefanski or John Dykstra. Basically, those guys are making too much money. It is unrelatable for most people, and people enjoy the $100, $500 per month. People like those stories quite a bit. So anyway, Damien, please shoot me an email. Would love to hear more. Deb Das says, I have 40 KGR keywords that have a value of 0.25 or less than that. Should I start a blog based on this keyword? Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. Nabul says, your podcasts are great, yet if you could mention a timeline with the main idea in the description so we can go right to the points we're more concerned about. Cool. Nabil, I will keep that in mind right now. Well, the other part is like, I want to have a lean team and I don't want to spend a lot of time on certain things. But if the podcast continues to grow, and maybe if I, actually put more effort into some of those admin kind of things for the user experience, that could be helpful. But at this point, you notice that my show notes are fairly brief. At most, we're getting like some links to other pieces of content that are related, but generally, yeah, you you just kind of got to find it. So, any other people vote for that kind of thing? All right, and David says you're 55. Okay, yeah. So there's a couple other podcast episodes that I've heard where people were like 50 or older, and they were like, "Hey, I don't want to like work until I'm whatever 62 or anything like that." So they kind of shifted their priorities. And I mean, obviously, like you probably imagine, David, if you're 55 and you're like, "Hey, I want to retire in like a few years," you may have to like reorganize and reprioritize in a very huge way. But if you're 20, you could be sloppy, throw into an index fund. I think someone mentioned, "Hey, look out for the bubble." Basically, and uh, I'm not an advisor, consult your own professional. And then I would say, I wouldn't even trust a professional, because like, what are their incentives? The financial advisors I worked with before were awful. Like I didn't know what their incentives were. I thought they were trying to help me, but I'm pretty sure they sold me garbage, because all my stocks in the last, which I just have index funds, by the way, they've crushed whatever they allocated in the past by a huge, huge factor. It's remarkable. But yeah, someone mentioned, I think earlier, "Hey, look out for the bubble." There's always some kind of bubble. Like the stock market is always like, not always, but it's like 90% of the time it's in a peak sort of period. So if you're investing for the long term, generally you're going to be okay. The bubbles even out if you average over, 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. The bubbles are not really a big deal. So, all right, continuing on. Dwight's asking about best link building to supplement KGR content. So I will advise you to search on the channel, go to Niche Site Project for link building, and you'll see several different options. I would suggest networking and then guest posting. So you got to go out there and see what's going on with people in the niche, in the network, and that sort of thing. So the other sort of tip is like, don't, because I've heard this in the last couple of weeks where people are asking like, "Hey, I'm searching for places to guest post. I'm looking for Right For Us. I'm looking for guest post footprints." And they're either charging money, or I don't get a response, or I get a plain rejection. You shouldn't use those to search for places to guest post. Those are the most common ones. Those have been published and recommended for 6+ years since I started. That is exactly what I heard. "Hey, search for Right For Us pages." You can find some options, but those are going to be the most crowded channels. The supply and demand is going to be off kilter. They're going to try and charge you most of the time if you get a positive sort of response. And basically, you need to go and network and find people that will be your friends online. Maybe you do some nice stuff for them, maybe share some of their content, maybe you link up to them as in like a roundup kind of post or something like that. Then they're way more likely to work with you. So that's what I advise. All right, I am going to play another clip here, and let's see what we have in store. We're going to talk about image SEO with John Dykstra, my friend over at Fat Stacks blog. There are many links in the description where I talk about, there are many links in the description for John's courses. I'm an affiliate for them. They are excellent. They're not like huge courses. They usually solve like one kind of problem. So if you're thinking, "Hey, I want to put some display ads and I want to make sure that I am making or I'm implementing like the best practices for display ads for my site," there's a course on that. So there's courses on many different items. I think there's about 6 or 8 of them. There's quite a few. In this clip, John talks about image SEO.
Yeah, I do use a lot of images. Filling out the alt text field very descriptively, I think helps a lot. And don't try to manipulate, like, don't just put in keywords that aren't related to the image. I just describe the image. That's it. Here's the image, here's what it's about. So that's number one. Obviously, like, optimize them so that they're pretty small files. Like, when I started with an image site, I was uploading like images that were 5,000 pixels wide and like 2 megabytes, which was insane, and it would take forever to load. And I wonder why doesn't my site load fast? Anyways, you learn, right? So now I resize everything no bigger than 1,000 pixels wide and optimize them down to like 150, 200 kilobytes. Even that's probably a bit big. The latest development with image SEO, which I like, is WebP format for images. It doesn't work in Safari, but for Chrome and I think Firefox, it shows up. That format loads images really fast, and you can get WebP with like Short Pixel plugin. I think Imagify also does the same. Ezoic has a site speed thing. They will do WebP format. So there's lots of options to do that. But basically they can actually turn existing images into that format. They load faster. It seems to be the latest format. So that's a big one. And I've done that across all my sites. In terms of some images, I like images because, especially on visual sites, because they can attract a lot of links. Mainly because people rip them off and then source link it. So that's worked out well in terms of link building, because other people just take them. I don't care. They can have them. In terms of, another question I get asked a lot is, I hate left and right aligning. Back when there was only desktop, it was great, right? You could do these nice, left align 300 pixel wide image, and then text would wrap around it and look cool and all that. Don't do that. With mobile, it makes a total mess. What you end up with is like a real thin strip of text on the right, or on tablet, who knows what it looks like. So these days what I do is I just go full size. Like on desktop, it's the full width of the column, which is usually like anywhere from like 700 to 800 pixels. And then in mobile, it'll take up the full width as well. You don't get any of that weird text wrapping. I think those days are done. I do the same with ads, by the way. I don't align ads left or right. I just like go center and full width. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Use them. Use images, I think. Don't steal them, though. Copyright trolls are out there in force. And use the stock image sites. Take your own photos. That's the best thing to do. I'm telling you, if you're into like I know, Doug, you do Amazon affiliate stuff. Buy the products you're writing about, and you can literally take 30 images of your own. I use an iPhone. They're not the best images in the world. I'm certainly not a pro photographer, but I'll take them, and they're good enough. And I think they do two things. First off, you get a lot of unique content. But second off, your readers see it's like, oh, this person actually has the product and used the product, and here are the images, because they're not like the nice fancy professional photos from the merchant on Amazon. So I do that quite a bit as well. I love being able to use my own photos. But stock photo sites are great. I use Shutterstock, but there's some free ones out there.
Very cool. And I learned something here, which is obvious. The right aligning or left aligning of images. So I still do that a little bit, but yeah, you're 100% right. I definitely have seen it where I have poorly formatted for like a phone or just a different display that's not like super wide. So I gotta remember to change that. And then, yeah, another note for the like not custom images, but images that you have taken yourself. I think iPhones are pretty darn good these days. I mean, they're way better than like the cameras that I had that were very expensive, 10 years ago. And if you can get the lighting like right, usually your picture is going to be pretty darn good, and it looks authentic. It looks real. People will trust your content a little bit more if they're like, oh, they have the product right there. So very good. And for me, like I guess you've done some like some video, and you have like camera gear and all this stuff. Like I just like the gear too, and I like to take pictures. So it's kind of a fun way to actually like mix the hobby with a way to make money, and it all works together well. So
Yeah, if you're into it, it's great. Lucky you. I'm not particularly into the gear, but I have no choice but to be.
Yeah. What is it that you don't like? Just curious.
Figuring it out. I'm not very good at reading instructions. I don't like trying to figure out new stuff, and then all the different the post production stuff, the editing, and it's very very time consuming, tedious. I don't care for any of it. I like writing. I got into this because I liked writing. I wrote all my stuff for years. I still like writing. I still write, but I realize that podcasts and videos are enormously popular, and so I got to play ball. But at the end of the day, for me, it's writing. I like to write. So
So that was John Dykstra, and you can check out his different courses, and he actually publishes like income reports. So there's a link in the description where you can like check out his most recent income reports and like track him along over time. Very interesting because he is making a lot of money and he puts all his expenses in there. You could see where he's making money in certain spots. And quick note, I almost forgot to talk about productivity and sleep. I got, I think multiple times this week, at least two, maybe three, I slept over 8 hours, which is kind of unusual for me just generally. A lot of times usually I can get over six. And if I usually feel pretty good if I get like 6 hours, 45 minutes to 7 hours, a little over seven, and I'm operating pretty good. But those couple days where I got over, or the couple nights where I got over 8 hours, I just feel awesome. Like the next day, I just feel so good. And the other note with productivity, and basically, if you're well rested, like your mind's more clear, you can get a lot more done. And I have been taking nootropics for I think about 6 or 8 months at this point, and I am a big fan of formula. So to John's point, if you actually have the product and you could show what you got, and you could um, there's a cool little logo here. But I'm a big fan of the creativity formula. And there's a link in the description, by the way. I'm an affiliate for them, but I am a paying customer. And I interviewed both of the founders, I guess it's a few months ago, but I was using the product and I was like, this is fantastic. In fact, one of the students recommended it to me. They were like, hey, I'm using these nootropics. They have multiple like different formulas. So there's at least 4 different formulas that I use. And I primarily use the creativity for like writing and or speaking. And then the clarity for, when I'm speaking more often, like when I'm doing a podcast or like when I'm doing a live stream. So I took one of these about an hour and a half ago at this point in time, and it's the clarity formula, and you can see potentially the ingredients here. And this is sort of a rarity where they tell you the exact. I know it's hard to read here, but they actually tell you the exact formula for whatever nootropic. Now I like formula over some of the other just general nootropic companies because they have specific formulas. That would be the correct term. They have specific formulas for what you're trying to do. So if you just get a general nootropic, which may or may not be fine, you basically end up with like the middle of the road sort of one size fits all. But if you want to go a little bit deeper, I encourage you to go over to formula, and there's a survey. I think it takes like 4 or 5 minutes. You just answer a few questions like, hey, do you find yourself unfocused? Do you want to focus harder? Do you want to like not get distracted? Different, I don't remember all the questions, but basically you go through, answer them, and then they will give you a recommendation. And I believe through my link, you will get a pretty good discount. I think it's 20%, but I can't remember exactly, but I think it's 20% off, and you'll be able to test it out, see how it goes. And right off the bat, I really enjoyed it. And the cool thing is I'm fine with caffeine, but some people don't like it. And basically, uh, the formulas have caffeine, or if you don't want caffeine, maybe you're sensitive to caffeine, or you prefer to drink your caffeine in coffee form or some other format, Red Bull or something. You could select all of the formulas without caffeine. So that is a good option if you want to sort of limit your caffeine intake or anything like that. So highly recommend checking it out. And I take some formula usually 4 to 6 times a week. You can take them a couple times a day if you want to, but because there's caffeine, I usually don't take one after about like 1 p.m. or so. So maybe when I first get up, I'll take something. And then if I am planning on working a lot in the afternoon or maybe working out or something like that, they're also great for workouts, by the way. You could take another one around lunchtime, something like that, and then it'll take you through the afternoon. So, okay, very good. We'll hit a couple other things here. And Richard's on. What's up, Richard? Good to have you. And Amir as well. So Munir asked about linking to other sites, and you're afraid that your traffic is going to go away because of link juice and your bounce rate may increase. And those sites are niche sites and their age is 2 years. Is Google going to take that negatively? My recommendation is to remove yourself a little bit from the SEO think. Because if you make all your decisions based on, hey, is this going to help my ranking? You're going to make weird decisions. Like you've taken a left turn here and you're thinking, hey, if I link to another site, 8 bad things might happen. And really, you have to think, all right, a visitor to my site is trying to get more information. They're trying to solve a problem. They're trying to figure out what product to get. If you think about that visitor and you're like, is this link a helpful thing for the visitor? Does it improve their experience? If the answer is yes, then I think you should probably do it. If the answer is no, then maybe you got to think about it a little bit differently. So basically, like, I think that is probably a good thing to do if that resource that you're going to link to is truly a good resource and it could help out the visitor. Don't worry about all the deeper SEO. I mean, you're talking about some very like deep minutia, and generally, like, if it's going to be good for the visitor, then you should do it. So I encourage everyone to take off your tinfoil SEO hats and think like a normal person. Like, hey, is this helpful for the visitor? And if it is, go for it. Stephen Buchanan is on. What's going on? Any questions from you, Stephen? If you're just hopping on, I had an announcement. I'm speaking at a event in New York City at a Google office, April 3rd. So yeah, if people are tuning in late, there's a link in the description. Pubtelligence over at Ezoic. It's put on by Ezoic in Google. Ezoic is one of those Google partner kind of folks. And yeah, it's in an actual real Google office in New York City. And I'm going to be speaking there. It looks like I have an afternoon slot. So basically, I'm going to be speaking there. So I am slightly terrified, and I will need to figure out exactly what I'm going to be talking about. But it's out there, and I'm on the website. And if you look at who else is featured there, I am I'm one of the smaller houses in the neighborhood. All right. Cool. All right. I went out of focus there. I'm receiving a phone call from my mom, so I need to jet. Thanks everyone for hopping on, and look out for some other cool videos and clips coming out potentially this weekend and maybe early next week as well. All right. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll catch you next week.